Hi everyone, welcome back. Happy Thursday. This is Haunted Hearsay. I'm here in Dublin. Caroline's up in Donegal, the wilds
Hello,
of.
everyone.
We have our own sort of Nostradamus called Miseog, and Miseog was born in 1816, and she predicted not too dissimilarly to Nostradamus. She had premonitions about all sorts of different things. We did mention her before, but we just want to go into a little more detail today. And Caroline's going to give us a little bit of backstory to different areas of Donegal that she spoke about. So, and just as a forward, I got most of this information from a website um, by a lady called Bridget P. Gallagher, who moved up to Donegal, and she is a natural healer and has written a book. So if anyone wants to look her up or check out her book, she also has a page with this information if anyone wants to look back over it after this.
I want to jump in very quickly. I actually said the other night that I was going to try and find out as much information as I could about Anchorage, which is just up here. For anyone else that's not from Donegal and doesn't know Anchorage, it's a beautiful boutique hotel, and it's sort of up near Errigal Mountain. But I wanted to get some background. It's very haunted. But no, what I did discover is it was built in the 1830s. I thought it was older, so I'm beginning to wonder, was there something there before it? It
Yeah,
was quite near the only train station in Gweedore, just literally up in front of that. And it was built as a hunting lodge. Now, I know it was used then subsequently as a barracks for a time by the British, and then went back to being a hotel, and then closed for a long time and is now a hotel again, but very, very haunted.
that's no close
So,
again.
well, I thought there would be more available. I really thought it was a case of going online and sort of like seeing what there was. No, there's very little information. Lots about the hotel itself now, but
Yeah,
very little of the past. So I think I'm going to have to visit people whenever I can and get a bit. My Auntie Mary lived up that direction. So see if what I can't find out from people that might know a bit more about the area that doesn't seem to be online.
sure, yeah. That
So
sounds great. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about it and then hopefully going for a drink there.
yeah, it is. It's an absolutely beautiful spot. They even have a lookout tower where you
Oh,
can
cool.
set up. They put the owner had buffalo brought in, so there's buffalo up there that's
Interesting.
graze there, and
Nice.
you've got your deers, etc. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful lookout spot just to sit and appreciate the scenery. It's absolutely fantastic. But
Cool.
again, very, very haunted though. So I'd like to know why. I'd like to know what it dates back to and what exactly is haunting it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Well, we'll check that out as soon as possible. So, I guess we just move on to Miseog. Miseog was her real name's Peggy Boyle. And Peggy Boyle was born in 1816.
Mhm.
A side note that I found out today is that Peggy Boyle's brother Manus was one of the first Irish people to travel to the US, to California in 1868.
Wow.
Settled there and never came back. But that's just an interesting note for
It
anyone.
is actually, yeah, to hear sort of things like that.
1868. So I guess that's the famine and all that. But yeah, I guess we'll just jump into it. She had many premonitions. I think you mentioned before a little bit of history. She lived. There
She
was
was from Kincastle.
yeah.
Her family from Kincastle, and she was Condy's daughter. And
Mm,
Condy was known locally as he was a real character, and he was also a smuggler.
mm,
And there was a lot of traffic in the sea that time because that's basically how you got into it. Most places along the northwest coast of Ireland was by sea then.
mm.
And so there was a lot of big boats that would be coming in from the continent, you know, like the African continent on its way to Europe or whatever. And there was a lot of bootlegging done off the boats a mile or two out from out the coast here. Condy, as I say, was a known smuggler, and he had a cave down in Mullagerog. Well, it's not that it was his cave, but it was a cave that he used, and it became known as Condy's cave. And you could only get into this when the tide is out. I was in it when I was young, along with my aunt and several friends. including Maura Boyle, that's relevant to Miseog. I don't know if she's a direct descendant, but she was certainly the one instrumental in getting a group together and doing stories and gathering all the information about Miseog, and they actually did it through a fast course.
Mm.
So that was, they brought attention to. I mean, I've known the story all my life, but she's certainly one of the people that was instrumental in doing that. So just had to mention her because I think she did it
Absolutely,
before
yeah.
Bridget Gallagher. Don't get me wrong, Bridget, lovely woman, and just lovely to see that people are doing this and telling the stories.
Mm.
Anyway, so Miseog was Conde's daughter. So she was infamous for being his daughter to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But was an old lady. I don't know. You can fill in the details. Was she married? Did she have kids?
Yeah, I believe she had children. I'll have to go back to the website, but Bridget's website actually has a video of somebody standing at her house, or the I guess the ruins of what would have been a dwelling that they lived in at some point. And then also it has some history about her family as well later on. So I actually was looking at I thought that maybe Bridget was related until I read the whole thing, and she wasn't. She's just putting the information out there. So
No, sorry, just to interject, I did say Maura Boyle. I don't know if Maura's. I think it could be sort of coincidental that there were Boyles,
there's a lot of
but
boils.
but it was a small community as well, so it's very possible she's related to her. But
Absolutely.
I must ask her the next time I see her.
And ask her if she has premonitions, if she has any psychic in the family, or you never know.
Yeah, I must ask her.
Yeah, so she predicted quite a lot of things. The five things I want to talk about today, I'm gonna just go one by one through them. And the first one is the Carrickfinn Airport that
Yeah.
she. So the quote is: "One day, large white birds would come down from the sky at Traban, White Beach, and carry people away." So that sounds like it's talking about airplanes, large white birds.
200 years before Carrickfinn Airport was built, she predicted this. And
Mm-hmm.
there's now an airport at exactly the beach she was talking about, Carrickfinn.
Mm-hmm.
And birds do come down, big white birds do come down and take people away.
Yeah,
So,
and it's not like she's talking about seagulls, because they don't really take people away, do they?
no,
Definitely,
exactly.
definitely.
It was her interpretation of what she was seeing. It was before flight was invented. I'm not going to keep butting in. I'm going to let you give the five quotes and I'll see if there's any more I can remember.
Sure, yeah. So the next one is definitely something we've mentioned before, and that's the Ballymanus mine disaster in 1943, where I believe 19 people lost their lives. So the quote, now all of this would have been written in Gaelic originally, not in English. So the translations are English translations. So hopefully they translate well enough. But so this one was: "A great ball of fire would fall and many lives would be lost." So what happened there in the disaster was a mine washed up on the beach, and all the men from the locality ran down to check it out, and it exploded. And
Well, it was there all day. It was a £500 mine, and there was quite a few of them in the waters around the coast of Ireland. I think ours was the biggest disaster, but it
mm,
certainly wasn't the only mine that washed up on a beach in this country at the time. But it washed up in the beach. Someone had been down lifting lobster pots, alerted everybody it was there, including the Gardaí in Anigra, and the whole community. At one stage, it was said there was like over 100 people down there having a look to see what it was.
mhm,
And a lot of them hung about. And then as tea time came, most of them started drifting off. And I think the guard was waiting for word from somebody else that would be more, sort of, I don't know what the sort of passage of, who did what, but they were waiting for that. And I know that it's at that time that my grandfather, my Granda Sweeney, from Rannihuel, his three first cousins, which they were his brothers, they were all brought up as the one family in Rannihuel. They were
mhm.
all in the house and they were all heading down to it because they had heard about it, but they had chores to do first, so they didn't get to go down all day. So
Yeah.
they were going down, and my granny, my great granny, um, she heard that there was tea down at Knockastollar in Gweedore here. There was a big boat in about a mile out there, and they were taking in like the likes of tea and sugar, and and this was real contraband then,
Yeah.
And yeah, so my grandfather hopped on his bicycle to go down and get tea. Now, Rannihuel to Knockastollar is about, trying to think, it is only about maybe 10 or 11 miles. But he cycled it, and he did it in very quick time anyway. But he said to them, "Don't use go down near Ballamanis till I get back, and we'll all go down together." And so he was down and back within an hour and a half. And as he pulled up to the house in Rannihuel, and he called his mum out, and he says, "Look, where's the boys gone?" She's, "Oh, they went down there a while ago. They got fed up waiting." And just as she finished saying that, the explosion happened. Apparently, the windows shook, the dishes fell off the dresser. Apparently, the explosion was felt as far away as Letterkenny, which is 45 miles away. There was
Mm.
windows broken in the houses and running fast,
Yeah.
from the blast and things like that, which are a few miles away across the actual water park. But there was an awful lot of damage. There was one gentleman that was sitting on a rock smoking a cigarette, and when the first people came on the scene, he was sitting on the rock completely naked with the cigarette burnt almost to the end.
Still.
The blast just blew everything off him. But whatever the cigarette, I don't know the logic of that, but apparently that was a thing. But I remember being told, my grandfather did a program as well about the Ballamanas. Well, he didn't do the program, he took part in it, I beg your pardon. A gentleman from Runafast on it, fantastic program if anyone gets an opportunity to see it. And he speaks of him and his mum jumping on their bikes, and like everyone else in Mulladuff and Rannihuel, the minute they heard the blast, they knew something happened at the beach, and everyone just started running. And the first person, he said, he came on, he knew it was his best friend, his cousin and his brother, because there was an arm in front of him on the ground. And he said, I knew it was him because he'd on his best Gansey.
Mm.
Oh, it was just the saddest thing ever. So him, his mother, and all the rest of the people in Mulladuff and Kincastle had to spend the day and the evening and the night picking up parts of bodies that were blown to smithereens. And they couldn't identify really any of them. I think there might have been one or two that were identified. So they had the local hall in Mulladuff beside Boner's pub. The coffins were all taken up there, but there was bits of people in each coffin, so they didn't know if you had all of the right person in one. You can imagine just how hard this must have been.
Yeah.
It was 19 from a very small community. I mean, you're talking about a mile and a half, 2 miles, and you know yourself, even now, it's not a big community. And it was literally that generation wiped out in one go. They were all aged between 14, and the oldest was 33, I think it was. He was a married man, but the average age was 14, 15, 16, 17. They were all children.
Yeah, that's awful.
It was just absolutely awful. And yeah, Miseog, she predicted that a century and a half before it. You know,
Yeah, and it's not just the one thing she predicted, it's multiple things, so
yes.
that gives some credence to her premonitions, I suppose. Um, okay, so the next thing, I'll read the quote and you can tell me what you think it means. Uh, the muck dove, or I don't know how you say that in
And
Donegal.
who?
The black pig will come from the east with flames of fire coming from its nostrils and make its way westward until stopped by the sea. So what do you think?
Train.
Trains, yeah. So this I think is the first train to Burtonport, I think. Or where did the train stop? Burtonport?
Port was the last stop.
Again, trains didn't exist.
No, not in her time. And apparently, I mean, like she was known to be down in that cave, her father's cave, well, her Cundy's cave down in Mullajerog. I have to point this out because I've been to it, and as I say, I've been to it when I was young. I've been over there many times since, and I can't find where it is. I know it's down amongst. We obviously were a lot braver when we were kids, or a lot. Well, actually, no, that's not braver. We were just stupid. No sense of how dangerous what we were doing was. Cundy's cave is a small opening down in the middle of rocks, quite close to the water, but when you crawl through into it, it opens into a big cave.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be okay at the very back of the cave as long as there wasn't a high tide, because the tide comes in and fills the entrance to the cave. So it was ideal for smuggling. If you got stuff and hiding the contraband down there, perfect for that. And that was done right under British soldiers that were based at Kincastle, just over where the Chaban was, the White House. It was known as the White House then too. Sorry, I keep exaggerating the story. But yes, Miseog predicted that too.
Okay, here's another one that's sort of relevant to everybody in the world. She predicted that there would be no difference between the summers and the winters,
Mm-hmm.
which would signify maybe global warming or a sort of change in weather patterns. I thought that was quite interesting.
She predict. Is that year five?
No, that's four.
Oh, was it? Oh, I'm saying no. Oh, I nearly butted in. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. There will be a castle above the strand as a place for strangers. Now, this place we've been to.
I know. I had my
Right.
50th birthday there
You did. It's the
a
Cashman
few moons ago.
the Cashman Or Hotel in Anagra.
Mhm.
So that's
And
that's
they do have a lot of the work that the West team did
mm,
when they were gathered. They have quite a few bits of that framed and up on the walls
up
in
on the wall.
Jack's.
Yeah.
It's known locally as Jack's, but it is Cashley Nor, yeah. And that was another prediction. She also predicted a fish that was like metal that could fight underwater,
Oh.
but with people. I can't remember the wording. It was very, I suppose it would be like somebody then that had never heard of anything like it trying to explain.
Exactly. And also
Yeah, it was worded very primitively, but it was like this fish that looked like metal or had like metal skin or metal looking skin that carried people that could fight underwater, submarines.
which again wouldn't have been around for a long, long
Well,
time.
not in 1816. They
Yeah.
weren't
Yeah.
in a wee tiny place in Kincastle. Kincastle is still remote.
Mhm.
Mullagerrock Beach is still remote. I mean, and this is in the 21st century,
Mhm.
and it's still a hard place to get to. It's not like we've got buses or trains or anything like that.
It's, I'll give you a bit of, I suppose, context. We used to drive up to Donegal every summer from
Mm.
Dublin, which today will take 3.5, 4 hours in a car, up to Burtonport anyway. And when I was a child, it took 7 hours.
Well, do you know something? See, you're saying that. When
Mm.
I first lived in Dublin in 1982, that's where I had Edward. Um, Dublin was like, yeah, 6 to 7 hour journey from Donegal.
Yeah,
I always remember from Derry to Mulladuff, it was like an all day journey, but it was like 3.5, 4 hours
yeah, I
from
could,
there. I mean, now it's what, an hour,
yeah.
you know, but it was like, but you know what it was is all the roads kind of followed these wee paths that went over the hills and things like that. Now they've just put roads through the hills, as it were. But yeah, amazing. It's like, how far we've come and not that long ago.
No, no, I mean, I'm
But it
talking.
is still, when I say we've no buses, we do, but we don't really have them at the moment because of COVID. They're all private buses. There are no public buses that travel from this part of Donegal, Gweedore, or the Rosses. The nearest public bus for us, you'd have to go to Letterkenny.
Mhm.
So we rely on private transport here. So yeah, so it's still not as accessible. And there's this woman back in 18. It was just very remote. So I mean, you can imagine her
Yeah,
predictions were extraordinary. The
they were.
only thing was that nothing at the time, it was things that were passed down word of mouth. I think there was things obviously noted and jotted down by people for them to be remembered. But I remember hearing those stories about her when I was a wee girl. My granddad then would mention them. And then when I was very young, I did get into the likes of Nostradamus and things like I was very interested, and I was also very interested in the family history. And my grandfather, my granddad Sweeney, was a great historian.
Mm.
People that were making films about Donegal or writing books about it. I mean, the amount of times people came to the house to get information and background. He remembered everyone's name. He could go back 4 or 5 generations and tell you who married who and who many children they had and where they moved. And, I mean, the man never smoked or drank. I don't mean he was lucid. He was 90, nearly 96 when he died. But yeah, he was a great storyteller. So Yeah, I heard an awful lot from him when I was very young.
And
But
it's,
I'm glad to see that the likes of Maura and various other peoples in Mulladuff and Anigra are doing their best to keep those local stories alive and gathering them together and collecting them now.
I mean, it's a pity that the stories haven't spread further, but I mean, there's always potential for that. I mean, I would have loved to know about that stuff. You were probably the first person that told me, maybe when I was 15 or 16, but um, I don't know anyone else who knows about it down here, and she's on a level of
She's up
prediction.
there with Nostradamus. The only difference is that Nostradamus was already famous for being a physician. And
Yes.
when the Black Plague or the plague or whatever it was ravished Europe,
Yeah.
he was called near, like near and far, and especially by the royal family, because everyone he tended to survived.
Yes.
It wasn't that he just knew how to look after people properly, going in and yeah, but very, except for his own wife and son, they were the only two he couldn't save. While he was off saving everyone else, they died of the plague at home. But anyway, he was famous as a physician, and so when he was making predictions, there were in things like the royal court. They were being made in places that they would be heard.
Yes, exactly.
And so, I mean, he was known, so people would invite him to parties and dinners and things like that. And it wasn't, he was encouraged by the Queen of France to immortalize them, to write them down. And he did, he wrote them down. They weren't published, I think, until a year before he died.
Okay, I didn't know that. I,
Yeah.
I have a book, one of his. Here it is. One of his books, prophecies. Yeah, it's backwards, but quatrains is what they call them, isn't it? A century in it.
Quatrains were centuries. So we have century now that means 100, but that was something, the quatrains were done in hundreds. So
Yeah.
that was a century. Um, I get a lot of people whenever I read Nostradamus, and I've been reading them, I think, since I think it was about 13 the first time I discovered about Nostradamus, and spend a lot of time reading and interpreting
Mm-hmm.
things. And some people overanalyze things. But
Yeah.
they do, oh my God, he got Hitler's name wrong. And I'm thinking, yeah, 450 years before that, in the sort of mountains in France, this hermit is writing about things in a country that hadn't been discovered at that stage, and
Yeah.
he got, or I'm talking about the new countries being discovered, but he maybe got he got all the predictions right. He might have got spellings wrong by one or two letters.
Yeah.
He might have got dates a week, not dates wrong, but years. He would get the dates right, but the years wrong in a few instances.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those predictions weren't made I mean, as I say, when he did write them and put them all down together, that was only a fraction of what he had,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
which is a shame. But I mean,
I mean, I know there has been some, I suppose, controversy about how um, ambiguous some of the quatrains are, but on with regards to Miseog, it's interesting how specific she is
yeah.
in comparison even to Nostradamus.
Well,
Nostradamus,
she's telling stories where she's not under threat of the Inquisition.
exactly, yeah.
He was telling stories where he had to be very vague because if the Inquisition got wind of it, he was studying things that were against the law in the Catholic Church at that time, like astrology and, you
Exactly.
know. And
So,
see, Nostradamus, he was brought up and taught Judaism, Catholicism, and it was one of the Asian ones. I don't know whether it was to
Buddhism
do
or
with Hindu. No, it wasn't Buddhism. It was either Hindu or to do with the Islamics, maybe. I'm not sure. But he was brought up to appreciate all of it, including alchemy, including the stars, including astronomy. So he had a very, what you would call bohemian parents. I think he had a grandfather that was Jewish, and then there was a mixed marriage, and then another mixed marriage. So they had different sort of religions, a bit like my family, different religions in the family. And so he was brought up, but I mean, he was taught. Um, a lot of it was taught in secret because a lot of it was against the law.
sure, yeah.
Hmm.
And I suppose Miseog didn't have the same.
No, and she wouldn't have had that public court where she's coming and telling people,
And
That's probably things that she's told people sitting around a fire at somebody's house knitting or something some night.
exactly, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I know it's not the same. It's definitely not the same because it's a totally different country. But in the UK, shortly after that, you would have seen the sort of Victorian craze for supernatural things.
Yes. Hmm.
Now we're talking. Miseog lives in a cave in rural Donegal. That's nothing like the high society in Dublin or in Britain. That would have been kind of fascinating.
That's what makes her all the more important in our local history, and all the sadder that we don't have more information on things that she predicted.
Yeah, I'd love to see and talk to maybe Maura and check out what's written on the wall again in the Cashlan over and
Hmm.
see if just for my own sake if I could expand on what I already know because we only have a snippet really of what I assume
Exactly. I know now that they made the effort to gather as much as they could
and
of
they're
stories. I've
local.
never read it all. I'm going on stories I was told by word of mouth, but
Mm,
I would love to, yeah, and find out exactly, just how much they were able to record of what she did do and say.
exactly, yeah.
But no, there is more. I know there's more.
Yeah, there absolutely is more.
Yeah.
So we can consider this part one until we find more information. And it's the kind of information because it was passed down word of mouth
Yes, exactly.
and the locals have gathered it, so that's where the good information is going to be. I'm not going to be able to dig online and find these things any
No,
more than we've already found. So I
that's
think
like me trying to find more about the Kurt and Kurtz online.
hmm,
That's not how I'm going to find it. I'm going to have to go and speak to people
exactly,
that know more about it locally.
it's
And
true,
there are plenty of storytellers here, but nobody gets the opportunity anymore.
exactly.
And they certainly can't do it during COVID. So roll on the end of COVID. Well, that's great talking about Mishnah. And as you say, it's only part one
Part
of
one
the Mishnah story. We have a lot more to find out about it.
to be continued.
But yes, and a lot more to find out about Encourage as well. So thank you, everyone. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, all of the above. It would be always appreciated. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good weekend, Ben. It was great chatting.
You too.
Good night, everyone. You all right?
You right.